Hello and welcome to our webinar on WCAG, ADA, EAA, Decoding the Alphabet Soup of Digital Accessibility Compliance in Higher Education. My name is Michael Bolton. I'm a Senior CMS Usability and Accessibility Specialist here at Carnegie. My archetype personality is the sophisticated and caring patron. I have 10 plus years of web quality assurance and accessibility testing experience, and I've worked on dozens of successful higher education website relaunches. A quick note, I am not a lawyer and I don't even play one on TV, and this presentation should not be taken as legal advice. Please seek legal counsel if you have any questions regarding a legal matter at your institution. For today's agenda, we're going to look at regulatory compliance. We're going to also look at a framework for addressing accessibility and some ways that Carnegie can help you along the way. Before I move into the heart of the agenda, I wanted to pause and just take a moment to acknowledge that what's required and what's expected of institutions here in the United States right now from a legal compliance perspective is definitely shifting. And there's no way to know what may happen to the regulations that we're going to discuss, whether they'll be rescinded or updated or enhanced. Unfortunately, none of us are prognosticators of the future. So I wanted to pause and acknowledge that, and also just lead me to kind of the heart of my opinion here is that beyond being regulatory compliant, which is an important aspect for really any institution, whether it be a higher education institute or a business, for long-term success and longevity, but providing accessibility is really important because it's the right thing to do. Up to 25% of the adult population in the United States has some form of disability, whether that be an easily recognizable disability or something that's hidden. And so having an accessible website and other digital communications is really key in maintaining communication pathways with all of your audiences, whether it be prospective students or current students, alumni, other community members, or even faculty and staff members there on site. So I just wanted to pause and say, regardless of what happens to these regulations over the course of the next few years, that I would really encourage your institution to take digital accessibility seriously and make sure that you're doing the best you can for all of your audiences so that they can continue to communicate with and interact with your institution. Okay, let's take a look at regulatory compliance and some of these acronyms and break them down so that we can understand what it is that is currently required of us. So I couldn't help but thinking, be reminded of as thinking WCAG, ADA, and EA, oh my, much like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. I'm just being overwhelmed by some of these things, but we're here today to help you figure out and understand these things. So the first acronym is WCAG. That stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Those are issued by the World Wide Web Consortium, or the W3C. And WCAG is important. It's basically a set of rules and guidelines that outline the requirements that specifically web content needs to meet in order to be considered accessible. There have been a few versions of this over the years, but WCAG version 2.1 level AA is what is commonly cited by most legal regulations as the standard to be met. So WCAG is currently broken down into what they call the POUR principles, P-O-U-R. And the P stands for perceivable, and that means that information could be presented in a variety of different ways. Maybe that's via text on a screen or via being read aloud by a screen reader. Next, the O is operable, and that's functionality can be used in different modalities, And so that means maybe it's a touch screen or a keyboard or a mouse. So all the content can be accessed via those different ways. Next is the U for understandable, and that is information and functionality is understandable. So this is providing easy to read language in your text, consistent navigation, those sorts of things. And lastly, the R is for robust, and that means content could be interpreted reliably by a wide range of browsers, media players, and assistive technologies. So your website should work on a Windows computer and a Mac computer and an Android device and an iOS device, etc. So these principles are really the underpinnings of the more specific requirements that are contained in WCAG. but these principles can really help you develop an understanding of broadly what's required as you are building and maintaining digital communication. So now that we understand a little bit about WCAG and how that's kind of the underpinning of these legal requirements, let's look at a few of those. So the first is the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, and that applies to state and local government entities, including public higher education institutions. And their latest rule, which was an update for Title II, sets specific requirements and deadlines for digital accessibility of web content and mobile applications. So this new rule sets WCAG 2.1 Level AA as the formal standard to be met for compliance. And the deadline for compliance depends on the size of the population for the government entity. And so for institutions, higher education institutions, that relates to the population of the entity to which you're related. So if you're a state institution, it's the population of the state. If you were like a county school or related to some sort of city or town, it would be the population of that particular entity. So for populations greater than 50,000, the deadline is April 24th, 2026. And for populations under 50,000, you get an extra year. The deadline is April 26th of 2027. It is worth noting that there are a few content exceptions to this new rule. So the first is archived web content. This is content that is maintained solely for research, reference, or record-keeping purposes and is not altered or updated after being archived. It should be clearly noted that this content is archived content. Next, you have pre-existing conventional electronic documents. So this is things like pre-existing PDFs or other files of that nature. Then there's content posted by a third party where the third party is not posting due to a contractual licensing or other arrangement with a public entity. So if you just have a student who makes a post on, a social media platform and tags your institution, you're not responsible for making sure that that post is accessible. But if you had, hired a media company to be making posts on your behalf, then you would be responsible for making sure that those things are accessible. Then there's individualized documents that are password protected. So this is things that are behind a password wall. It might be things like a student's academic record or information on their financial balances there at the institution. And the last exception is pre-existing social media posts. So social media posts before the deadline do not have to meet the requirements, but those after the deadline do. So you've got some time to familiarize yourself with the accessibility tools of the various social media platforms. There's a link here on this slide that can take you to some additional information and resources regarding this new ADA rule. Our last acronym is EAA, or the European Accessibility Act. And this applies to organizations operating within the European Union or the EU and or selling products or services to EU citizens. So how does this apply to U.S. institutions? So this could create some legal requirements if you have campus locations in Europe, or perhaps if you're offering online classes to students living in Europe. So officially, the EAA uses a regulation called EN 301549 as its standard. What's important to note is that for web properties, this means meeting the same standard as the ADA, WCAG 2.1 Level AA. The EN 301549 includes some additional regulations and requirements for things like digital self-help kiosks and digital signage. The deadline for compliance to the EAA has already passed. That was actually June 28th, 2025. So if you do have presence in Europe, I would say it's important to make sure that you're caught up on compliance as soon as possible. So far, we've discussed WCAG and how that accessibility guideline is used in the ADA and the EAA for legal compliance standards. Now let's take a look at a framework for addressing digital accessibility at your institution. My first suggestion is to make a commitment. Digital accessibility really starts with a commitment. Organizing key stakeholders across your institution to make a plan for continuous improvements in this area is really key. Ensure your website has an accessibility statement. This includes documenting accessibility standards you're using and any assistive technologies that you support. Make a public commitment to providing accessibility in all your digital experiences, and then stand behind that commitment. Establish an accessibility audit schedule. This can be perhaps a yearly or quarterly review of your digital experiences to make sure that you are maintaining accessibility. And then create an internal governance policy to establish who's going to be responsible for the various aspects of caring for digital accessibility across your website and other digital communications. After you've made a commitment, the next step is to engage with experts. Accessibility is really a broad and deep area of expertise, and your success in this realm depends on working with folks who are experts in this area. That could be internal resources. Perhaps you have some staff that have expertise in this area. If so, continue to support them by providing opportunities for them to stay up on latest trends and get the latest education. If you don't have any internal resources, perhaps it's time to add an expert to your internal teams. If that's not just a possibility at your institution, then it's time to consider external resources, whether that be partnering with an agency or other external resource. They can provide a valuable set of skills and a fresh perspective and look at your digital properties to make sure that they're accessible. It's also extremely beneficial to engage with people that have disabilities in testing your digital experiences. Really, those are the folks that are going to give you the best insights into whether or not your content is accessible. Then it's time to engage the stakeholders there at your institution. It's really vital to provide training and education so that everybody understands the importance of digital accessibility. This is going to look different for everybody. So when faculty and staff and administrators all know and understand about this importance of accessibility, it makes it much easier to maintain an accessibility program. The W3C that I mentioned earlier offers an excellent free course called Introduction to Web Accessibility. It's a really great look at the foundations of what digital accessibility is, and it's primarily given by folks with disabilities. There are also numerous conferences and webinars available every year that you can have various stakeholders attend. I'd also encourage you to consider hiring an accessibility expert to come and speak directly to your staff and administrators to communicate how important this area is. Now it's time to get into the real work of digital accessibility. My recommendation is to start with new or nearly new work. It's often easier to focus on new work or in progress work because you're early in the process and you can weave accessibility in from the beginning planning stages, which makes it much easier to execute as the project continues to go along. So that's typically called shift left thinking, where we're shifting things earlier into the project in order to make them easier to execute throughout. Review any in-progress work to make sure that accessibility issues have been addressed before the project is completed and shared. And then establish some sort of review process to take a look at your projects as they're completed and take away lessons learned to weave those learnings into your next projects. And then the final part of this equation is reviewing and improving legacy systems. Older websites and digital systems are more likely to have accessibility issues that need to be addressed. So conducting accessibility audits of existing websites and email templates, using a combination of both automated and manual testing. It's really key here to note that while testing tools have come a long way in the last 4 or 5 years and can catch a large number of accessibility issues, there are not any tools that I'm aware of that can do all of your testing for you. And there is still a human touch and manual testing that's needed in order to determine if a website or other digital communication is truly accessible. Then it's time to make a plan to address critical accessibility issues. I recommend starting with the issues that have the broadest impact. So if you have an error that appears on every page, maybe that's in the global header or the global footer of a website, start with those accessibility issues first because they'll have the biggest impact because it's on every page. And it may be time whether to determine whether fully remediating the issues or just building something new is the better approach to meeting the needs. It can be that sometimes systems are so plagued with accessibility issues that it's really more cost effective and time effective to just build something new from the ground up. Ultimately, of course, that just really depends on a number of factors. As a leader in marketing and enrollment services for higher education, Carnegie is here to help find the right solution for your institution's goals and needs. As I mentioned earlier, really people are the point. We believe in the power of human connection, and we want to help you connect to your prospective students, your current students, your faculty and staff, your community, and your alumni and donors. Having a powerful and accessible user experience in today's age of digital communication is essential for maintaining contact with all of those folks. Some of our website services include redesigns and refreshes, as well as technical SEO and other SEO services, copywriting, and assessments and strategy as well. A few that I want to highlight in particular are a broad range of assessments, most particularly, of course, accessibility given today's topic. We offer two levels here. We offer a kind of a targeted accessibility assessment, that's a smaller assessment, and then we offer a larger scale accessibility audit. As I previously mentioned, again, website refreshes or website redesigns, and we also offer ongoing website support. I pulled together a few resources for you here. A link to a blog that I wrote about Web Accessibility 101 for higher education. That's part of an ongoing accessibility blog series here at Carnegie. A link to learn more about Carnegie's website design and development solutions, as well as a link to learn more about partnering with Carnegie. I really appreciate your time today. It is your most precious resource, and I definitely know and acknowledge that. If you do have any questions, my email is listed here on this slide, and I would be happy to discuss any accessibility questions that you may have. If you have any broader questions about Carnegie and the solutions we offer, please reach out to your account manager. Thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.